Today we'll be using a really collaborative approach to facilitating this session. And my name is Susan Jack. I'm a professor in the School of Nursing, and I'm really pleased to be joined by three colleagues who are all members of the Creativity and Humanism pillar within the McMaster Program for Faculty Development. So I'm joined here, if they can give a little wave, by Sean Park and Emily Block and Sarah Lal. And each of us come from different academic and professional backgrounds, yet I believe we all really share a passion for creating cultures for work and practice and education where individuals are respected and valued and feel safe to be active, engaged participants who are willing to take a few risks. So with respect to this topic, none of us have any conflicts of interest to declare. And one of the reasons that we decided to do this workshop is because, as we all can appreciate, over a year ago, many or most of us had to rapidly transition from working and meeting and teaching in person to doing this work virtually through a range of many different platforms. And so while these technologies like Zoom have ensured that we've remained connected, the actual experience of connecting has felt really different and frustrating and tiring for many of us. And one of the reasons that we often feel so exhausted at the end of the day of Zooming is that many of the norms and conventions from in-person meetings that we've become so used to don't actually work so well in virtual meetings that we're now attending on a regular basis. So our small goal today is just to introduce you to the concept of rituals and how they can be introduced and used to enhance connection within virtual meetings. So it's our goal to immerse you in this idea of a ritual design mindset, and then not only introduce you to some of these rituals, but we hope to engage you in participating in some new rituals for virtual meetings. So our plan today is Sean will be introducing you to what we mean by ritual design. We're going to engage in some different activities, and hopefully then we'll have an opportunity to debrief on how these activities made you feel and to generate some new ideas from all of you for future meetings. And then we'll end with one closing ritual to help you transition from this work to your next activity.
Okay, so we're going to do a couple things today. Feel free to use the chat. We're going to share some ideas with you, and then we're going to get you to do some activities. And so one of the things to get us started is, how do you sort of keep engagement with your screen in these meetings? One is to sort of realize that you can actually actively switch between the gallery view, right, and the speaker view. And so you can sometimes see a little grid of squares that'll help you sort of see the gallery. But recognizing that we can pay attention differently, and Susan will actually just cue us throughout our time to just make a switch and just to notice how that affects your attention. And the other is you can actually also turn off your self view. If you find, where else in our world are we used to having a mirror around that's reflecting our face all of the time? It can be really strange. So feel free to do that. You can also change your name, add gender pronouns in your meeting options. Okay, so Emily, you want to kick us off? Is our check-in?
Yeah, so we'll have a little check-in. So if you're able to turn on your camera if you have one, and if not, that's okay. But I just wanted to check in with everyone and see if you were to sort of gauge how full your tank is in terms of your level of energy, just by sort of using your arm like this. Sort of where would you sit right now in this meeting of like how energetic you feel, this being full and this being empty? And I'll just watch everyone's screen, get a census. Okay, so we've got some pretty full tanks. Any really empty tanks? A couple, so half full. Okay. And there's someone I don't see, so I'm not really sure, but it looks like we're about halfway full, really full, or we're completely empty. So we've got a mix today. So thank you for participating in that little check-in.
Thanks, Emily. So rituals, I think we're probably familiar with the term, but I was sort of pulling from the work of a number of scholars, particularly Chrisat Osink. And really, we're talking about actions that people or groups do routinely, repeatedly. There's a pattern, there's a script to it, but there's a sense of symbolism or meaning to the participants. That somehow it's special or different than brushing your teeth or putting on your shoes, just sort of those other acts, which are important, but might not necessarily have any sort of deeper significance or meaning. So, there are many different kinds of rituals that we engage in. When we get together in person, we put out the chairs, that's routine. But a ritual might be sort of a special arrangement of those chairs, which would foster a different kind of conversation. It's routine that we say, hey, how's it going? Hi, how are you? It's different, though, as a ritual to say, hey, let's all take a minute. And before we start going into business, let's actually talk about what we did on the weekend, right? Which is a bit more specific. There's some more intention to it. And really, the idea behind rituals is that their aim is to create a sense of unity or connection, investment in the group, that there's a sense of like, hey, why are we here? What are we doing? What motivates us? And what helps us sort of establish our identity about who we are and what we do. Meetings, they are sites for rituals. Think about all of the activities that, in our person-to-person, pre-COVID life, handshakes and breaking bread and, moments of silence. There's many things that we do in meetings that are not just about kind of going through the agenda and doing business. There's things that celebrate, who we are and our milestones. And so, feel free, let us know in the chat here about, what rituals are part of, the meetings that you currently have. Do you have new ones? Are there old ones that you did in person that you've now adapted to your online virtual life or virtual work? Let us know in the chat. What are some of the things that, as you think about things that have meaning and symbolism, what are some of the things that you're doing in your meetings these days? Let us know in the chat. Love to hear what you folks do. Great, thanks, Tara. So yeah, having a mindfulness moment. That word mindfulness wasn't in 20 years ago. We didn't really have that in contemporary mainstream culture. Now it is, right? And I think we have more of a familiarity. Oh, okay, checking in with how you're feeling or how you're doing. Poetry, debriefing, guided breathing. Love that, Sharona. That's awesome. Let's see here, regular team time. People to lead a fun activity. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's even as simple as just allowing people to chat while people kind of come in the room, right? And then the endings. What's one thing that you're taking away from today? All right, so you folks are on this. So let's kind of dig into a little bit about the work that we're going to share from. A couple of months ago, I picked up a couple of these books to help me adapt, and they've been really useful as inspiration for thinking about the framing of ritual, but also there's many different things in which you can sort of frame how you're engaging with people, depending on what the need is. Sometimes it's about productivity. Sometimes it's about connection. And there's a number of different resources. So we just wanted to share the ones that we're drawing from. We have no commercial interest in this. I think we should do our own at some point, but we'll share these in the chat later. But we're drawing from some of this work. And part of the impetus for ritual is that there are some things that you might consider as kind of invisible about the assumptions and values and beliefs of a culture, of a group, and then there's things that are the visible and might be considered easier to change. So our behaviors, how we measure things, and what are the artifacts that we use. And so we're going to sort of play with some of that stuff on the top today as a step forward into how do we sort of shift culture in a virtual team environment. And really, work is kind of at the intersection of ritual. Sort of, there's a huge field of anthropology behind this, but also then the field of design, right, which is really about creating things that have a useful value to people. So this is kind of the intersection where we're at in our work today. So let's jump into a ritual that we might use when we're bringing together a team for the first time. So Susan, you want to cue us for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And this is a great group to do this ritual with, because this ritual is truly for when a group or a team or a class is meeting for the first time, or you're really in those early stages of getting to know each other. And the goal of this ritual is to facilitate team members in getting to know each other and being able to identify mutual connections that they share. And whether, it's, do they have a shared friend in common? Did they have the same supervisor at another university? Have they shared a similar life experience? Have they had, traveled to the same place? Do they come from the same alma mater? And this ritual is really based on the premise that when mutuality and common ground can be established, that becomes foundational to developing trust within the relationships that are being formed within a team. And ideally, when individuals trust each other, then this helps to create a team environment where risks can be taken and where creativity is really allowed to flourish. And people are interested and more willing to become engaged with each other. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to randomly assign you into pairs. And so I'll be putting you into breakout rooms randomly with another person in the session. And your challenge with very little instruction is to form a high quality connection with the person that you're paired with, to find something that you mutually share, a common mutual experience. And so the first person is going to have about a minute to start asking questions to find that mutual connection. And then I'll send a quick note to each breakout room and ask you to switch. So the other person then asks another series of questions to find a second shared mutual connection. And then we'll close the breakout rooms, bring you back, and we'll ask all of you a few questions to debrief about this activity. So off you go. We'll see you in about 2 or 3 minutes. Great. So this is just a really quick ritual for a new group to form some new relationships and human connections. I really enjoyed my time getting to know Yvonne. So I want to ask all of you, and feel free to share verbally, what was your first reaction and feeling about this activity? What was this like for you?
Yeah, curious. Yvonne says curious. Yeah, a bit nervous.
Yeah, a bit nervous, uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly did that last, that nervousness of going into something with very little instruction?
Great. Happy to meet and make a new connection. Wonderful. Yeah, Anna, go ahead. You got your hand up.
I think it just depends on the person. For me in my job, I dive right in, so I don't have a problem kind of talking to people and figuring out where they're from, who they know, what songs we sing. So today, Sharona and I just started singing karaoke songs, so we had that in common. But that's just us, we're different. Yeah, we were trying to find out our musical similarities, since her name is Sharona, and if you love the 80s music, you know where that's going. And then mine, when she asked, honestly, that when she asked, I said, I think there's a song that a lot of people like to do, that we just sang that for about a minute.
That's awesome.
That's how that happened, right there.
And Anna and Sharona, what other meeting of, within 25 minutes of not knowing people, would we already have this interaction and this feeling of levity and lightness? Thank you for showing us how this works.
Yes, for singing in front of a national audience. Yes, we would love to do that again.
Yeah. And just thinking about that time pressure in a very short period of time, what was more engaging, the process to actually discover the mutual connection, thinking of your questions, or the surprise of what the mutual connection was? I really enjoyed the process. I found it so engaging to meet with Yvonne. We started talking about our bookcases and our books, and somehow that went to gardening and talking about that we both planted this weekend, and then moved to almost a conversation about mojito mint and making mojitos. So, to me, it's always, I never know where this process is going to end up, but I love how it meanders.
Can I add to just, I love this time pressure. And what if we don't? Is playing the opposite of it is try as much as possible to be different than the other person. If you're not finding it, and it's okay, so how are we totally different, right? So kind of playing that common and then different, right? So people don't necessarily have to feel that they have to get it. Great, thanks, Sharona, as well. There's always going to be a connection.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And I think that's the essence of being human, is that we can always find a connection and a way to find some common ground, which again leads to that trust and an ability to share and again take risk, which is so important in any classroom or any new team, or any activity that we join together as a group. Great.
Susan, I'm just, I think I don't know if I'm pointing my finger in the right direction, but Susan's to my left here.
Just in response to the question, I don't find, I mean, the process is engaging and fun. I don't find finding the mutual connection like a surprise. I find it more a pleasure or
Yes.
something enjoyable, not surprising is how I experience, like, oh, wow, we share that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pleasure of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Susan.
All right, so social etiquette and virtual etiquette is really all about the awkwardness, right? That what are the things that we do to avoid awkwardness in social situations, and how do we feel more comfortable? And there's, I mean, tons of awkwardness here in virtual meetings. And so one of the activities that we've started to do is to start to crowdsource, right, solutions or ideas for common kinds of issues, which we feel kind of awkwardness here in virtual meetings. And then what are some of the things that you folks are doing, right, to be able to deal with it? And so what we're going to do today is we're going to do some brainstorming together of some ideas. And the way that we're going to do it is I'm going to share the link to a Google Doc. Now, it's totally up to you if you want to add your name to this or not. The intent is over a series of meetings, this group, we're soliciting ideas and are going to collaboratively create kind of like an infographic. Let's get the best of the ideas about all of the different social awkwardness issues we get on Zoom, and then share that out. And so if you want to be added to that list of collaborators, that would be great. But if not, then just feel free to share your ideas. And what we've done here is we've created a list. We've created some boxes with some sort of typical kinds of issues that you might find, like silence, right? Or maybe there's a really emotionally hot situation between people over Zoom, right? Or you have tech challenges in your hosting, distractions from home. There's a couple of other things on the list. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take about 5 minutes to share what are some of the issues that you find that are making your time awkward, and what are some of your ideas for them? And you might even just be a spectator. You might just sort of see how this process unfolds. Let's do this. Okay. Wow, that was wild. Like that thing just exploded. Some great ideas in here, folks. I think we should write papers this way. I mean, just like that's really great, folks. I see lots of amazing ideas in here. I think you might agree as well. I'm just curious what other folks felt about the experience of doing that. How'd that feel? Yeah, highly emotional topic for sure. Yes. And you can feel it, right? Like in some of the things that people have kind of gone through, like the disrespect and all that stuff, right? Like it's real stuff. Yeah, tripping on our virtual toes. Yeah, so that's perhaps a conversation for another time, but about the use of virtual collaboration technologies like the Google Suite, like things like Mural or Miro or Jamboards. How do we find our space together online? So I think we're going to move on to our one of our last rituals.
So that was amazing. So much productivity within the span of a few minutes. So congratulations. So for this final exercise, this is a curious one because I think that some of us have been especially keen to develop rituals around how we finish our day. We work, as you're all familiar, most of us are working from home now. We're spending all day in front of our laptops, We move around a lot for meetings, but not necessarily in our chair to another chair, but from Zoom link to Zoom link. And so it's really important for us to have some way of winding down at the end of the day, to transition from our professional lives into our personal lives, our home lives, our social lives. We all have so many different facets of who we are as human beings. So really the goal is to mentally switch off so you can switch on in the other aspects of your life fully. So we're curious what your rituals for finishing your day off are. And so as you've been doing throughout this whole session, please do share in the chat. Share if you're willing to do this, unmute yourself and just share with us verbally. Would love to hear and maybe learn from some of the rituals that you have so that we can maybe try them out and see if they work for us. Sean, what do you usually do at the end of the day?
I started taking an online Qigong course. And so my dad, because he's kind of in our kind of bubble, he comes over and we do Qigong with each other. It's just my son gets in on it a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is that for those of us who don't know?
It is sort of Taoist internal yoga. I mean, a lot of breath work, a lot of activation of meridians. I studied it for a long time.
Perfect.
Anjali's got a hand up.
My end of day ritual is a shower and a change of clothes. I don't spend the entire day on the bike, but I try and make an effort to attend every meeting possible while moving for a number of reasons. I find it really actually helps my focus, and I don't get up off of this thing. I don't straighten the things on my desk. I don't respond to someone's request for a piece of toast. I'm sweaty. It dictates my lack of makeup and sleeves, and I don't know. It just found it works well for me.
Very interesting. Cool. Thank you for sharing. In the chat, we have quite a few. Making supper for the kids. Gin and tonic. Yes, Sharona. Okay. Leave the room and disconnect from technology, change clothes, go to kitchen to prepare dinner, or go outside for a walk with the dog. Nice, Susan. Very cool. I also like to break away from the screen and go for a nice walk, especially when the weather is pleasant, but also when it's rainy as well. I just find that the fresh air is just, it's such a relief from the otherwise static air inside.
So I think we're going to wrap up shortly here. And really, I mean, this has been really quick. We did actually quite a few here already today. This is a list of the ones that we did on our list. And we've invented some more. So some things to consider perhaps, I mean, is, introducing new rituals to a group, to be mindful of what is the culture that you're in. I mean, is there an embrace of kind of new ways of connecting, or do you have to kind of be strategic about how you do it, how it's phrased? And are there others that can be allies in doing this work? Because it can feel really nervous kind of for the first time, trying out something new. That might feel a little awkward, and it might feel less awkward if you have some support or people to help you with it. But really, we want to just kind of briefly hear from you about, was there anything that sort of surprised you today from any of this work? And really, are there any things you want to take away and apply from today?
One thing that maybe didn't surprise me today, but that gave me pleasure. I think I'm going to transition my words from surprise to pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you for that. Was that Susan earlier? Was that in a meeting, the more interactive you are, and the more opportunities you give people to engage rather than to just listen, how less tiring this culture of virtual meetings becomes. I can't believe 45 minutes is already up.
Yeah, nice to feel some engagement here.
So easy to be talking to screens without personalities or faces, right? So it's really great to connect and share thoughts about this kind of stuff.
We'd like to keep this conversation going. I think this is culture work. This is culture change work that we're doing, and we need to share our stories about what we're doing and how it goes. And so if you're on Twitter, to tag us, what are some of the things that you've come up with? Let us know. Yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit about what you try and what you do from today.